Eisenhower's leadership was deceptive because he was a smiling, genial presence, and that's what most Americans saw. But behind the scenes, he was clever, even Machiavellian. Fred Greenstein, a professor at Princeton, coined the term hidden hand. He was an expert at the hidden hand of government. Eisenhower would have described himself in the camp of idealistic, honorable, duty honor country, West Point. He would have used every cliche in the book about soldierly leadership. But as one of his aides once said, he had a large inventory of principles to justify pretty much whatever he wanted to do. He wouldn't have copped to that, not publicly in any way, maybe privately he would. Yeah, it's a little unfair to compare contemporary presidents with Eisenhower. Eisenhower didn't have to deal with cable TV and Twitter, and you never see Eisenhower out there attacking his opponent or raising money, two things that a modern presidential candidate has to do. So the comparison's a little bit unfair. Nonetheless, I think Eisenhower did have some sort of eternal qualities of leadership that included this duty honor country side of him, and having integrity and being upright and being self-disciplined, but also, when necessary, being cold-blooded, and devious is a strong word, but being manipulative. Yeah, I mean, I think the great ones all have to have, every arrow in their quiver, including some ones that are not always attractive. Military service comes in lots of shapes and sizes. It's true the American people have passed over a couple of combat vets, John Kerry and John McCain, who were courageous in combat. Eisenhower never was in combat himself. He missed World War I because he was training troops. World War II, he's way too important and knows too much to be in combat. However, he's a great military leader, not a combat leader, but a great military leader. But a great military leader is a politician. I mean, you don't get to be Supreme Allied Commander unless you're a pretty good politician. Maybe small p politics, but he had great political skills. Ike had unusual experience with command. I mean, year after year. His diary entry on his first night in the Oval Office was, well, big problems and challenges ahead, but it kind of feels familiar to what I've been doing since 1941 and even before. So he had an extraordinary command experience that is kind of unique. But he used it well. He learned his lessons and then he applied them. Well, interestingly, this is peculiar. When you consider what a populist age we live in and TV's everywhere, both Obama and Romney are kind of detached. They're not all that eager to be out there pressing the flesh, neither one of them. And Ike had a kind of detachment too. I mean, Ike wasn't pressed to be out front the way these other guys are, but he had a way of sort of hanging back, and you didn't always know what was lurking in his mind. Maybe all great leaders are like that, but contrast to say with Bill Clinton, who's out front and center, give me the love, giving the love. I think actually Romney and Obama, although they have great differences with Eisenhower, share this kind of detachment. Well, we could all benefit from learning a few things from Eisenhower. One is patience. I wish I had more of it. But it is a sign of great leadership where you don't have to rush to judgment. Eisenhower would wait and not decide until he absolutely, sometimes he'd wait too long. But he had that capacity to wait, so we all could use that. He had this ability never to show petulance in public. He had a huge temper. He would blow up at his aides, but he didn't show it in public. And I do think that Obama, Romney, they have moments, again, they're more photographed than Eisenhower was and more cameras around, but they have a tendency to have these sort of awkward moments when they show some peevishness or petulance. He was stuck with a unique situation where he couldn't afford to fight a war, but he couldn't afford to ignore the enemy. So he bluffed. Now, this is peculiar to his time, to his own nature. He's a great poker player, he's a card player. He knew how to do it. It's not a strategy I would recommend for others. It's not like you can say, well, the Eisenhower strategy could easily be applied. No, really, Eisenhower only could apply his strategy. You had to have his credibility as Supreme Allied Commander to bluff the Russians the way he did. Nonetheless, there are elements of it that are important, of humility and patience and hiding the ball when you have to and not rushing out, letting your subordinates take the credit and also the blame, the hidden hand. It's sort of a pat analogy, but I think it's actually meaningful in Eisenhower's case because he was a bluffer, and he knew when to hold them and when to fold them. You know, and he's a bridge player too. I mean, and his closest aide, Andy Goodpaster, said he learned, you know, he applied his card playing technique. This is not just a useful metaphor, it's actually something he did. Eisenhower came with a huge reservoir of support. He was like the most popular American there was, and he won easily in 1952. He won by a bigger landslide in 1956 because he worked at maintaining this pretty carefully. I mean, he was very accessible. He gave more press conferences than anybody since FDR. He was on TV a fair amount. He wanted to project this kind of trustworthiness, some would say grandfatherly, but, you know, credible, national, paternalistic presence. He worked at that. That didn't just, you know, so he worked at maintaining this high level of support, and he did. His average approval rating as president was 65%. That's a number that people would kill for today. It went down briefly at the time of the Sputnik and during the '58 recession, but basically it stayed up there the whole time. Well, you know, in World War II he had to sack a lot of people, and he did. He was cold-blooded. But as president, he maybe should have sacked the CIA director and did not. It was argued that he sometimes, his patience, which I've called a great quality, maybe he was a little bit too patient, and he should have moved a little bit quicker to intervene. He maybe could have been quicker on Joe McCarthy, who was this crazy red-hunting, name-calling, dangerous figure. And Eisenhower let McCarthy hang himself, but some of Eisenhower's aides felt he should have been out there. On civil rights, Eisenhower did a lot behind the scenes, but maybe he could have done a better job at the so-called bully pulpit, conditioning the United States to get ready for integration. I think just his humanness, and both as this is a commonplace thing with biographers, but I found out he was more human than I expected. I mean, he had a bad stomach, he had a bad heart, he had a bad temper, he drank a little bit too much at the end, sleeping pills. I mean, human weaknesses, but also extraordinary greatness. I mean, his ability to keep a secret, really big secrets about nuclear weapons, and to deal with that level of responsibility and to take responsibility on himself. Well, I knew about it, but until I really dipped into it, I didn't know how great that was.